Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to our live stream, courtesy of First Star Logistics. You're in the trenches right now with Dave Lapham. We're in studio, and it's good to catch up with you guys, get your thoughts, opinions, try to answer questions, have a little interchange, a little dialogue about where the Cincinnati Bengals are. That 3-3 record is the bottom feeder in the division. They're right in the hunt, though. Got to remember last year they were 4-4 after 8 games, and they went on a streak. 8 games in a row they won, 10 counting the playoffs. Can't count on that, but everybody in that locker room knows they've been in this situation just last year, and it doesn't mean anything in terms of what's going to happen this year. There's no carryover, but they do know that they accomplished something last year after getting off to a slow start, and they put themselves on hold. There's no question about it. They have a chance to sweep the NFC West. I mean, maybe it'd be good to switch divisions. They've beaten everybody. The 3 wins are all NFC victories, and they're all NFC West victories. You got the Rams, Arizona, and Seattle. 49ers, it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. The 49ers are in a mode where they've lost 2 straight road games after starting off 5-0, and they're going to be at home. And they're going to want to get right at home in front of their fans. So the Bengals are going to get the best that the 49ers have to offer. There's no question about that. Who's going to be able to play? Who's not going to be able to play is going to be a big issue, big factor in the football game. Debo Samuel has a hairline fracture in his shoulder. He is out. Won't be playing against the Bengals. Will big Trent Williams be able to go with that ankle issue? That's a big, big deal right there. It's going to be an interesting battle to watch. Trey Hendrickson working against Trent Williams, all-pro against pro bowler. That's the thing. This 49er team, when healthy, 7 all-pros, not just pro bowlers. You know, you make the Pro Bowl, then they take the best of both conferences and form an all-pro team. 7 49ers, 4 on offense, 3 on defense, 1 on every level defensively, and 4 on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, you got Nick Bosa, Fred Warner at linebacker, and Hufanga at the safety position. All 3 of those guys are all-pro players. Offensively, Trent Williams is an all-pro. George Kittle at tight end is an all-pro. Debo Samuel at wide receiver is an all-pro. And then Christian McCaffrey at running back is an all-pro. And he didn't look like himself in that football game against the Minnesota Vikings last night, in my opinion. He was under 3 yards a carry most of the game, 45 yards on 15 carries. That was a big factor. He did score a touchdown. How about him? 16 straight games, counting playoffs. He scored a touchdown, NFL record. He's definitely the head of the snake. He's the straw that stirs the drink, whatever you want to label that guy. They're going to have to control the 49ers ground game and control Christian McCaffrey in that ground game. And they're going to have to compete, just like the Minnesota Vikings did on the ground. The Vikings were averaging like 70 yards a game on the ground going into it. They were like 30th in the NFL. The Bengals right now are dead last, by the way. But the Vikings, not much better. And they competed, and they ran the ball well in the early stages of the football game. The biggest key, though, in that game, play with a lead. Play with a lead. The 49ers had outscored the opponents going into that football game 41-6 in the first quarter. Had not allowed a touchdown in the first quarter, had not allowed a team to score first all season long. Well, Minnesota Vikings said, we're gonna wreck all that. They score the first points of the game on a touchdown drive, and at the end of the first quarter, it's a 7-0 lead for the Minnesota Vikings. And 49ers were like, well, you know, we were up by 35 points in our first contest. You know, 41-6, we've outscored the opposition in the first quarter. And when you play with the lead, the 49ers never had a lead. Minnesota Vikings never trailed. When you play with a lead, man, it changes the whole dynamic of play calling all 3 phases of the football game. So hats off to the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins brought his A game, as did the Minnesota Vikings as a football team. They brought their A game. Kirk Cousins, 2-10 on Monday Night Football. He didn't let that phase him. I mean, he went out and played his tail off and they didn't have their best receiver, Jefferson. He wasn't in the football game either. So Deebo Samuel and Jefferson, you can say that was a wash. Bottom line is Minnesota Vikings got themselves a very, very big win. And the boilerplate for the Bengals to follow when they go out to San Francisco and play the 49ers is exactly what the Minnesota Vikings did. The 49ers had 3 turnovers in their first 6 games. 3 turnovers total. They had 3 last night. They doubled it. They doubled down. 3-1 football game. Purdy had 1 interception all year long. He had 2 last night. Doubled that total. So playing with a lead, winning the turnover battle, +2. You go +2, you're going to win a lot of football games. They just did all the basics, man. All the things that you need to do to pull off an upset victory. They did it. See if the Cincinnati Bengals can kind of match that boilerplate a little bit out there in San Francisco against the 49ers. There's going to be a challenge because the 49ers don't want to lose 3 in a row, and they don't want to lose at home. So it's going to be a battle royale out there, the Cincinnati Bengals this Sunday, no question.
Lap, we're going to go right to our guy, Yash, who's always with us on the live stream.
He is.
Even though he's in England. He's in England. So we love Yash. His question basically, would you trade for a tight end like a Hunter Henry, a running back, and everyone's talking about P. Ryan, or someone on the D line like Sweat or Young?
I think right now, during the bye week in particular, Duke Tobin and his guys are doing their due diligence and finding out what is available out there, what it might cost to get that player if available out there. It does take 2 to tango. And, everybody's talking about all these deals. How many really happen? Not many. Not just here in Cincinnati, but on a league-wide basis. You have 32 football teams. Not many deals happen because you can't come to an agreement on the terms of the deal. I mean, obviously, the one that's trading the player wants every bit they can possibly get. The one that's trying to procure the player wants to do it in a reasonable level. They don't want to mortgage their future. So these things are hard to put together. In fantasy world, it's easier. It makes a whole lot of sense. But fantasy football and the NFL are 2 different dynamics. But there's no way that the personnel department didn't burn the midnight oil during the bye week, making sure that what players might be available, what might that cost be, and you don't want to be surprised by a phone call. I'm not sure the Bengals are making a lot of phone calls, but if they get a phone call from somebody, you don't want to be surprised and not prepared. So I think they've done a lot of due diligence as they get ready for the deadline, which is coming up on Halloween.
Let me ask you this, Dave. All the years you've covered the NFL and the Bengals, how many trades really work out that happen during the season?
Yeah, it's not a big number of trades that happen during the season, and it's tough for them to work out because the guy comes in, he's not been there since training camp. He hasn't. Everybody else is all the way from training camp to this point in the season. So next week, it's very close to half the year is gone, and now this guy has to come in, learn a new system, get up to speed with his teammates. It's not as easy as people think. It's not just like going at like backyard football. I'll take him and give you him, and let's just go play. It doesn't work out that way. There's so much more that goes into it, and I think that's a big part of the reason why sometimes trades don't work out. It's just some guys are not. They learn at different speeds, different tempos. They need different ways to learn. So it's not like a cookie cutter. Trade for this guy, and we know in 2 weeks he's going to be up to speed. He might be, he might not be. And okay, you put him in for a limited package. The guy you traded may not have been in for a limited package, but now the guy you pick up, you can't expect him to be up to speed with everything that the guy you traded away had in his memory bank from training camp all the way through. So it can be difficult. There's no question about it. And I can only imagine unlearning and relearning terminology. Man, that's not an easy thing either. So sometimes, I played with the Bengals for a long time. We had different coaches who had different language, different terminology. And you have to unlearn and relearn. And sometimes the same word meant two different things, in their schematics. So it's like, oh yeah, that it triggers whatever the word was, triggers something that was in the past. Well, you got to block that out. Now it's triggering this because now here we are in the present. So there's a lot that goes into it that people don't realize. They think, you just show up and go play just like you played for the other team. Not necessarily. Sometimes they work out. A lot of times they don't. There's no question.
Another one of our regulars, Dolores Cole. Hey, Dave and Dave, do we trade for P. Ryan or leave the running game as is? And P. Ryan's a guy where we were just talking about could come in, already knows the system.
Yep.
And contribute right away.
I'm very puzzled what happened in Denver. I don't know if it's a personality issue with the head coach, the running back coach. I don't know. I can't imagine his skills have diminished to that point. I mean, the Bengals made an offer. Denver made an offer. They were very, very similar. They both had the same value in mind for Samaje Perine. They both wanted him. Samaje Perine left not because the money was so much better in Denver, but he thought he'd have a better chance to be the guy, get more burn in terms of a player, because Joe Mixon here in Cincinnati, and he was with Joe Mixon at Oklahoma and was like the number two guy to Joe Mixon in Cincinnati. Get out of the Joe Mixon shadow, go to Denver and maybe log more opportunity. Didn't happen. Maybe they didn't. The offense that they're running, they don't think fits Samaje Perine. I don't know. I mean, he caught the ball well. He ran the ball well. He blocked. I mean, he was the best blitz pickup guy the Bengals had when they're protecting Joe Burrow. So it's very interesting. And you wonder, you think, okay, well, if they don't value Samaje Perine, I mean, his number of snaps have been minuscule. I mean, he's not contributing at all out there from percentage of snaps basis. So you would think that anything that you would offer for Samaje Perine, Denver would have to think about. So that one potentially, I think, might have maybe the most merit of occurring, because I don't think, they're not looking for like a third round pick or second round pick or something like that for Samaje Perine. I don't think it'd be not a day one, obviously, not a day two. Would it be a day three pick? I guess potentially. Would it be end of the draft, a sixth, seventh round that they'd be looking for? So, that's the situation. And obviously, if we're thinking that, so are the Bengals. The Bengals aren't going to overpay for Samaje Perine with the Denver Broncos or any other team in the National Football League. So that's the thing. There's both parties have to be on the same page. Both parties have to agree to the value of a player before a trade can even be, thought to take place.
We want to remind everybody we're streaming live on In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, also the First Star Media Group channel. And we want to make sure you also remember, take part in every week the Bengals play a game. First Star Logistics is giving away some unbelievable prizes. We get to see them when we walk through the lobby, and the jukebox up there that's out for week 8, unfreaking believable. And this is a Bengals themed jukebox, and it's anybody would be super excited to have that in whatever man cave or room that they use, game room or their television room, whatever. I guarantee you're going to love that, whoever wins that prize. But make sure you go to the Twitter page of First Star Logistics for all the details to get in on this drawing. That'll happen. You have until, I think, 11:59 Sunday night. So when Dave's working his way back from a win in San Francisco, that's when the deadline will be. And usually they'll announce that winner on Monday at some point in time on the First Star Logistics Twitter/X page. So
it's pretty cool. The Bengal logos everywhere. You're the only one in your neighborhood, maybe the only one in your county, maybe the only one in your state, maybe the only one in the whole region to have that jukebox. You'll be the talk of the town, man. Talk of the town.
Another regular, Dave Lennox, says he's looking forward to the Jonah Williams and Bosa battle, and also the Bosa Burrow, the two former Buckeyes.
Good friends, good friends. Yep.
That should be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that you've got one of the best defensive linemen, the highest paid defensive lineman in all of football, Bosa, who in 2022, I want to make sure that I get this right. Bosa led the National Football League in pressures, and the pressures that he generated were phenomenal. It was like 70, almost 80, like 76, almost 80 pressures. It was crazy how he got after the quarterback. So it's that's going to be interesting to watch. I think Bosa is going to go against Orlando Brown some, and that'll be an all-pro against a 4-time Pro Bowler. And you know, that's a hell of a matchup right there. And then on the other side, he'll work against Jonah Williams. And I think, how much will he work against Jonah Williams as opposed to Orlando Brown? I think it's his call. I think the coaches say, look, who do you feel most comfortable going against? And who do you think your moves are most effective against? And who do you have the best handle on in terms of trying to beat a guy in a pressure moment? And Bosa is legit. I mean, there's no two ways about that. He's the reigning defensive player of the year. Says it all right there. Every time I see that kid with his equipment off, you talk about somebody that's, as they say, swole. This dude is buff, man. This dude works hard. And yeah, Joe Burrow's friends with the Bosa family, and Nick Bosa in particular. So it will be interesting to see.
Jim Browning says he'd like to see more of Hudson getting some game time.
Yeah, Tanner Hudson, he's got the longest catch of the year at the tight end position. I know it was over 20 yards. Let me see, Hudson. Yeah, 26-yarder he caught. He's averaging 12 yards per catch on 4 catches. He's on the practice squad now. I would like to see Irv Smith Jr., and I just talked to him in the locker room yesterday, and he said he's 100%. So that hamstring issue won't be bothersome at all. Hopefully it doesn't reappear, because that can happen. But I'd like to see that kid stay healthy, because I think watching him in the OTAs in the offseason in a training camp, I was excited about what he was bringing to the table. He can run. He's a good route runner. He's got speed. You know, he's like a big wideout. And I think Joe Burrow was excited about having him. And, you know, he's missed over half the year with the hamstring issue. So, you know, it's can he get healthy and stay healthy and be a viable option, another target in the receiver room, tight end / receiver room. I think he might be a little bit of an X factor, a little bit of a wild card in the second half of the season here.
We're going to go back to Dave Lennox. Lap, what are you worried about most for this game versus the 49ers?
I'm most worried about the running game. The 49ers have a very creative running game. Mike Shanahan is brilliant. What he does with formations, with motion, with counters, misdirection stuff. I mean, it is a very, very difficult running game to defend. They're averaging almost 150 yards rushing a game. I mean, it's legit. And the Bengals defensively are giving up 142.8. They're 29th in the NFL. So you get a defensive team that's struggling to stop the run against an offense that can really run the football. But like I said, that was the same thing the Minnesota Vikings game last night. Minnesota, you know, they were struggling to stop the run, and they did a good job controlling the running game of the 49ers. They were struggling to run the football, 30th in the NFL. They ran the ball well enough. The Bengals are 32nd in the NFL. I think that's going to be a big, big key in the football game, controlling McCaffrey and the 49ers running game. I'm not saying you stop it, but I'm saying control it so it doesn't become, you know, now too many holes in the dike. I can't plug all the holes, and here comes the entire offensive package at me. If you can make Purdy one-dimensional like the Minnesota Vikings did and then pressure him, I mean, they blitzed him the Vikings blitz over 57% of the time on defense anyway. That leads the league. And I'm not saying Lou Anarumo is going to blitz that much, but Lou Anarumo, as we know, has creative pressure packages, and he can bluff and he can do everything else. And if you're playing with a lead and you're controlling the ground game, it's easier to call the game. That's what I'm talking about in terms of what needs to get done in that regard. So if you can control the running game, muddy the middle of the football field, don't let Kittle go off, make Purdy have to attack you to the perimeter. He doesn't have a howitzer. He has a good arm, but he doesn't have a howitzer. Make him throw outside the numbers to the sideline. The ball's in the air a little bit longer, tougher to make those throws. Make Purdy beat you with those throws. He lives in the middle of the football field. You watch all the big plays Purdy makes, they're always down the gut. They're always between the hash marks. They're not outside the numbers. Now, not totally, but a high percentage. He's trying to hurt you in the middle of the football field. You have to take that away.
Dan the man, unsure if I'm actually entering each week. The details on Twitter say to do things I don't know how to do, like post a screenshot proving you've followed them. No clue how to do that. It's not as hard as we think. You can do a couple different things. If you're on your computer, you can. There's ways to cut and copy the area that they're asking about, or you can actually use your phone and use Twitter/X on your phone. Just take a picture and load that picture, and that's the same thing as a screenshot. So just kind of we have to get our boy Isaac and have him
there you go,
maybe get on there and answer more.
Our tech guru,
our tech guy. So but no, we'll kind of put some more up there so everyone can get involved in these, because the things we've given away from First Star Logistics, the PS5 Bengal themes, and I know Dave was busy working, but we had Gary Owen and TJ Hushmanzada and Dre Kirkpatrick all up in the First Star Logistics suite.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave that thing a lot away with the recording. I mean, just the jukebox. And then I know I'm forgetting things. There's so many big prizes coming yet. I mean, we still got a long way to go. We got 11 games.
That's right. That's right. We're not even at the halfway mark.
Yeah.
Not close yet. Just about a third of the way through the season is where we are.
Yeah. What can be next after this jukebox? I mean, I'm telling you, you walk through the lobby and you see this thing and it's like, is there any way I can get that to my house? So we'll make sure we'll get Isaac and Mason to maybe post some more stuff about how to get involved and make sure you're taking part of it. So let's go back up here. Dan the man says, so far every guy that's bolted from Cincy has gone on to virtually disappear with his new team.
Pretty much so, Dan. And I think a lot of teams can say that exact same thing. Trades historically don't work out for whatever reason. I mean, I think some of it's short term is what I've been referencing. It is crazy. It is crazy. And sometimes when guys go to a change of scenery, it's a huge adjustment. A lot of guys don't want to be traded. A lot of guys are married with young kids. It's a family stress. You have to pick your family up, move them to another location, or you have to go by yourself, leave your family where they are and let them finish school and all that sort of thing if you have young kids in school. That's what people don't understand. These guys are human beings, and they have the same challenges as all of us do with respect to family and taking care of your loved ones and all that sort of thing. And that can be a tough thing. That gets in the head of players, and it becomes an issue. So you saw a lot of players over the years. I don't want to be traded. I don't want to have to pick my family up and move my family. The latest is Saquon Barkley. Barkley made that declaration to the New York media. I don't want to be traded. I don't want to put that stress on my wife and young kids. I don't want to have to go to a new location. I want to stay here in New York. A lot of guys feel that way. A lot of guys really don't want to be traded. Some guys do, but I think a lot of people can tell you, as Forrest Gregg used to say, the grass ain't greener like a lot of you guys think. The grass is greener over there. It ain't that much greener. You got it pretty good where you got it. I mean,
You experienced that as a player. You had a decision to make at one point in time in your career.
It wasn't a trade. It was ended up going to the USFL and had to pick family up and move family. And I can speak to it. Split school with my kids, split the school year. I didn't want to be one to, okay, family's going to stay in Cincinnati. I'm going to New Jersey. I brought everybody, and they half the school year there, and then we all went back to Cincinnati, and they finished the school year there. So, and then you little things, but they're important things. Where do you live? Okay, do you rent? Do you buy? What type of neighborhood? I mean, there's a lot that goes into it when you do have a young family. I mean, I can speak to that experience. It's not as easy as people think. That's for sure.
Dan the man comes back and he says, "Hey, we're 4-13 versus San Fran, worst record versus any opponent. Time to make a dent in that win-loss record."
It is, and like we said, not against the same opponent, but you have a quarterback who is 2-10 on Monday Night Football, and Cousins lit it up. I mean, Cousins passed for over 350 yards and made a lot of unbelievable throws. His offensive line responded, threw it 45 times, didn't get sacked. So yeah, you're right. It's time to even it up. Plus, they're 2-0 in the Super Bowl. They won Super Bowl 16, won Super Bowl 23, two huge games, obviously, in storied franchise history for both franchises. And I was kidding with Dan Horde. I said, if I vomit in the booth, it's nothing personal. It's just, when I see those San Francisco 49ers colors, I do get a little sick to my stomach.
Jeremy Powers says, "Do you think Sharping could win the guard spot over Volson?"
I think if Sharping could win the guard spot over Volson, Sharping would play that guard. There's the one thing that you have to realize, and Pro Football Focus doesn't have any metric to realize this either. Cleveland's the number one defense in the National Football League. That's who the first game was against. We know what Baltimore's defense is all about. That was the second game. Then all you had was Aaron Donald at his position when they played the Rams. Then all you had was Simmons at his position when they played Tennessee. The best defensive tackle, 1A and 1B, in terms of being able to pressure a quarterback and all that sort of thing. Arizona was the easiest matchup. They scored 34 points. Seattle, tough defensive football team, 17-13 grinder. He has played against very, very good competition. Back-to-back weeks to have Donald and Simmons, that's not something that any guard in the National Football League would say, I'm in for that. So when you look at grades, it's like, okay, you got a guy that's grading in the 60s and 70s, but he's playing, just Jimmys and Joes in the interior of the defensive line. You have a guy that's grading in the 40s, and he's playing against the two best in the National Football League. Shouldn't there be some kind of a curve there? In terms of grading, it's like, man. So you have to take a lot of things into consideration. And am I saying that he's playing great? No, he can be better. And one thing that I've talked about is you get in a situation like he was in against these really good defensive tackles. I remember the first time, playing against really good defense, you want to get your hands on them right away. Well, sometimes you do a little too much in terms of leaning and that sort of thing to get your hands on them right away and get that secure feeling. You can't do that. You can't lean. That's exactly what they're looking for. They're going to make a move or a counter move off of that lean like that. So you have to extend your hands, but stay back, keep your shoulders back. And that's one thing that I've noticed a little bit. He's a little bit too aggressive. He's like, okay, I got to go make sure I hit him first. I got to get my hands on him first. The best thing for him probably is the bye week, not physically, because I think he's okay, but mentally, all right, okay, look at it again, learn from it, then put it away and get away from football for a little bit, recharge the batteries, come back and play 11 of the best games you've ever played. But put that aside. That stretch, the first 6-game stretch was tough. You can't let, great coaches I've heard many times in different levels of coaching even. I've heard it at the high school level, the collegiate level, and in the National Football League. Don't let one loss turn into two. Don't let it linger. Get over it. learn from it, put it away. Same thing in your individual matchup as a player on a week-to-week basis. Don't let one poor performance turn into 2 or 3 or whatever. Learn from it, put it away. That's what Volson has to do now. Is, you had the bye week, you had time to refresh yourself, get away from football, and come back renewed, and come back almost like square one. I'm going to go back to the basic fundamentals and techniques, and I'm going to start building back up on it. That's what I would do. I would go back to, the infancy stages of things I have to do to make sure I'm in position to pass protect well my quarterback.
I stress to people all the time, Lap. We talk about skill positions and people think of running backs and receivers and DBs. The biggest skill position on the field is an offensive lineman.
I can tell you that nobody else wants any part of it, because it's blue collar things you have to do from a skill standpoint. It's not pretty stuff. It's blue collar stuff, but it is. There's a skill set. It's not just you just don't take some big lug off the street because he's a big body guy and say, okay, yeah, you can jump in there and play in the offensive line. There's a lot of good guys that played, at the collegiate level that just can't cut it in the NFL and other, and then guys separate themselves within the NFL to the all-pro type players. But there's a huge skill set. And I'll tell you what, as Trent Williams plays, watch him for a little while. In my opinion, he's still the best lineman in football. That guy is a big, thick brick wall. He's athletic. He's got unbelievable hands. He's got it all, man. His techniques are sound. He's a great, great player. If he doesn't play, that was a blow on Monday night when he didn't play. If he doesn't play against the Bengals, Trey Hendrickson is going to be like, whoo. It's a vacation compared to what I was going to have to go through with Trent Williams. Trey Hendrickson has a high level of respect for Trent Williams, as does every defensive end in the NFL.
Yeah, I got lucky. I learned so much about O-line play from my kid brother who played at West Virginia University. And I remember watching him go at
But Dave, West Virginia University in the NFL, there's totally two different levels of skill set. I can tell you that from experience.
Well, I remember watching him. He was about 268 pounds, and they were playing the University of Miami.
Uh-huh.
And he was going against his assignment for that day was Vince Wilfork, who was 350 maybe at the time. And there's two. And he said it's all about
technique, pad level.
Technique.
Get your pad level down, man. You're going against a big horse like that, you got to get your pads down.
Claus says he's not worried about the Niners. He honestly thinks the Bengals are going to win. Bengals are going to show that they are back on track, and they are a team to be feared in the league.
You know what? I think that the Bengals can beat the 49ers, particularly where the 49ers have played the last couple of weeks. But, man, when they were on their 5-0 run to start the season, they didn't score less than 30 points. They scored 30 against Pittsburgh, 30 against the Rams, 30 against the Giants, 35 against Arizona, 42 against Dallas. That was their first 5 games. They looked like a juggernaut. And then, it fell apart. Cleveland ended the party, 19-17. Then they lose another low-scoring game to the Minnesota Vikings. Defensively, though, it's going to be a challenge for the Bengals. Most points they gave up all year long was 23 against the Rams. They have not given up more than 19 points in any other game. Cleveland beat them 19-17. This defensive football team, everybody talks about the 49ers and Shanahan and this great offense. They were dominating people both ways. The point differential in the first 5 games of the season was so much dominance by the 49ers. Nobody was close to a point differential in points scored and points allowed. They're still second in the NFL in points scored and second in the NFL in points allowed. And last I heard, scoreboard decides the game. You can talk about all these other matchups, and all, but score. What's the score? Scoreboard. That determines what's happening, man.
Les Hernandez says, hello, Lap and Dave. Can the Cincinnati Bengals ever beat the 49ers? It's almost the impossible feat.
I think the last time they were out in San Francisco, they did beat the 49ers, if my memory serves me correctly. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup. It's always been a tough matchup. Bill Walsh, when he went out to San Francisco, there was obviously he wanted to show Paul Brown that he made a mistake in not selecting him as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals and Bill Taggart Johnson instead. And he went to Stanford and proved his mettle as a head coach there at Stanford and gets the job of the San Francisco 49ers, and the rest is history. And Bill Walsh, wanted to make his point, God rest his soul, and he did. And I'll tell you, what a run he had at quarterback. Joe Montana and Steve Young. I mean, you can talk about back-to-back quarterbacks, and there's been a bunch of them. Every franchise. Kenny Anderson, Boomer Esiason is pretty damn strong. I mean, that's a good 1-2 punch. But Joe Montana and Steve Young, man, Super Bowls speak volumes there, and both those guys are multiple-time winners.
I had one here. We're going to find it again. Everybody's jumping in here. We'd love to see it. TJ Wright says Chase versus Ward is a matchup he's looking forward to. He said last time Chase won that battle.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Jamar Chase is a battle royale for anybody in the secondary. There's no doubt about that. He's got 50 catches. That's tied for 6th in the NFL, and the players that have more catches than him have played another game. The Bengals have been on the bye, obviously. 9th in the NFL in yards, 556, 3 touchdown catches. He's got 35 first downs receiving, which is 4th most in the National Football League. Again, he's a game behind a lot of these people. So, but the thing is, the next most catches, Tyler Boyd, 30. He's got 20 fewer catches. Mixon has 16. Higgins, who's been injured, has 14. Like Brian Callahan said, so somebody other than Jamar Chase has to step up and start making plays. You can't just lean on one receiver, lean into him the way the Bengals are. I mean, in today's NFL, you just can't do that. And other people are going to have to start being factors in the offense in terms of the receiver core. And my understanding is that Brian Callahan, right before the bye week, he got up in front of the team, the offensive football team, and called guys out. I mean, he named names, and he said, I got to do things better. And he's talked about what he needed to do better and what other people, this is fine. This one's not. This performance is acceptable. This performance isn't. And sometimes you have to do that. And everybody has to be accountable. And I can tell you, when Paul Brown got up there with those Benjamin Franklin glasses that he had, and he had already graded everybody already had a grade on every single play, and he got up there in front of the team and just started calling guys out. I mean, you had an armpit down to your waist. You were hoping that you weren't one of the names that he was going to be calling out, because he would tear you apart in a few words. I've never been around a guy that could say more in fewer words than Paul Brown when he was tearing you down. I mean, it was unbelievable. And he'd look over those Benjamin Franklin glasses with that steely stare and just rip you. But guys responded. I mean, it was a motivator for sure. And sometimes you have to get that kick in the butt. I'm all for, player-friendly environment and all that sort of thing. But if somebody's not doing the job, number one, call them out. And if he still doesn't, replace them. Go to somebody else. That's life in the NFL.
Jeremy Powers is back. He says, why isn't Chase Brown getting more touches? Do you see that changing?
I mean, I think that's the kind of thing, Jerry, that was talked about during the bye week. I know during the bye week 2 years ago when the Bengals lost the Super Bowl, Frank Pollock changed his whole run game. He went from an inside-out zone scheme to a gap scheme, pin and pull, and totally different. Just reinvented the running game. Do I think they're going to do anything that dramatic in the running game? No. But I think they are going to tweak it. I think they're going to evaluate what they're doing and how they're doing it and who they're doing it with. And two things. Whenever a running game is struggling, two things need to occur. The offensive line needs to finish blocks better, and the running back has to make the first guy miss. If that happens on a higher basis, on a more regular basis, a higher percentage of the time, if the offensive line is finishing and the running back is making the first guy miss, you're going to have a good running game. If neither of them are working, you're going to struggle to run the football. If one of them's working, you're going to be inconsistent. So those are the things as an offensive lineman. I don't care what scheme they're running. I don't care what they're asking me to do. One thing that I know I got to do to make things better, finish my block, sustain the block longer, finish the block. And if I'm a running back, if for whatever reason, if it's blocked well and they have an extra guy in the safety in the box or whatever it is, whoever's there, or a safety is 6 yards away from you and he closes on you, you can't let that guy bring you down. You got to make that first guy miss. And so if both of those things happen, I think the running game improves dramatically no matter what schematic they're running in the second half of the season here.
Natty Ron says, Dave, can the Triple H threat, Huber, Hill, Henderson, get the Brock Purdy?
That's going to be a key. I thought that was a significant factor for the Minnesota Vikings. I thought they got Brock Purdy off his spot. There's no question about it. They didn't generate tremendous number of sacks, but you saw Purdy running for his life. I mean, he was scrambling around. I mean, he was running around trying to extend and create, and they did a good job on the back end, still covering people up. So the H boys, Hendrickson, Hubbard, and Hill, they have to have a big football game. There's no question. And like I talked about earlier, it starts with they're going to have to control McCaffrey in the running game. He leads the National Football League in rushing. He still does. After a subpar game on Monday night, he led the NFL in rushing before he even played on Monday night, even though he was a game short. So he is definitely the straw that serves the drink. And, he can score catching the football. He can score running the football. I think he could be a damn good slot receiver in the National Football League and play that position at a very high level. He is a very, very talented football player. So they got to control that ground game and then get after the quarterback. There's no two ways about it. And it's going to be interesting to see. That's going to be a big, big factor in the football game.
Our guy Cliff out in Cali says the NFL is having a TD drought, down 20% from last year and the least since 2010. It's hard to score right now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, defenses are playing pretty good football, but you're looking at a team, the San Francisco 49ers, that going into the game on Monday night, they had in the first 6 weeks, they had 22 touchdowns, tied for third most in the NFL. They'd only allowed 8, second best in the NFL. They're a plus 14 in turnover touchdown differential, best in the league. That's what I'm saying. They were so dominant in the early stages of the season. I mean, they're in the red zone scoring touchdowns. The opponents in the red zone settling for field goals. That's going to be a big factor in this football game. If the Bengals can get in the red zone and finish, and then the 49ers limit them to no better than 3. Look at the 3 possessions they had last week in the second half in the red zone. Out of the 4 possessions, they gave up a field goal, and then they had an interception, and then they recovered 2 fumbles. They stopped them on 4th down 2 different times. So if you can play red zone defense like that, that's foolhardy to think that can be the case. But if you can limit the opponent to 3 points, a high percentage of the time in the red zone, you got yourself a chance, and that's what the Bengals are going to have to do with the 49ers.
All right, we got to start counting down, Dave, because we do have another recording after we get done.
Yeah, we do.
Livestream with someone. People want to watch for that later in the week.
Yes, and that'd be Cam Taylor-Britt, who you can arguably say has been as valuable a player for the Cincinnati Bengals as anybody. He's made big plays. His 2 interceptions have been huge. One was a pick 6, and one he returned over 20 yards, and they kicked a 54-yard field goal. Offense didn't do anything after that return, but he returned it 24 yards. It was 2.5 first downs the offense didn't have to worry about. And fortunately, McPherson converted 54-yard field goal. So Cam Taylor-Britt has done it.
Jim Browning's back. He says he likes how the defensive backfield is beginning to gel. They are now almost scary with their speed and coverage ability.
Yeah, I think their speed is really starting to show up. And one thing that can negate speed is uncertainty. And now they're playing with a lot more decisiveness. And when you feel like you know exactly what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and how you're supposed to do it, you can play fast. And these guys that are sub 4.3, when they're playing fast, it is warp speed. And they're starting to like, don't worry about mistakes, just go. You know, and if you go, sometimes the mistake's not as big. But if you are unsure, and you don't do anything, and you don't utilize your speed, you're killing everybody. You're killing yourself. You're killing the ripple effect of that is worse. So just go. And now they're going, and they're not making as many mistakes, and they're going where they're supposed to be, and they're getting there pronto.
Andrew West says, hey, Lap Pirine coming back makes just too much sense. We will have 9 picks next year with the projected 2 comps. No way 9 picks make this football team in 24. Chances we give up a 6 for Samjay.
For Samaje, yeah. I mean, you know, it's like you thought that, but look at how young this football team is. A lot of rookies made this football team this past season. When you're paying the quarterback, like the Bengals are paying the quarterback, and the Bengals are going to have to pay the receivers, at some point, you're going to have young players that aren't eating up a ton of salary cap. And at that point in time, now you've got to have a good, solid draft. You have to have multiple picks and some, you know, have an opportunity. Okay, we're a little bit deficient, say at the whatever, pick a position. Have an opportunity to make 2 or 3 selections at that position group. That's when the draft has been successful. They've drafted multiple tight ends, for example, and maybe even 2 make the team. Or they've drafted, you know, multiple defensive backs like they did last year. Look at the draft they've had in the last 2 seasons on the back end. And they knew they were going to lose a couple of veteran players in free agency because of salary cap issues. So the remedy to salary cap problems is the draft and college free agency and making sure that you have done your due diligence and you're picking the right people. So I don't have a problem with them having multiple draft picks, because the more, if you only have 1 pick at a position of need, your odds of making the right pick, I'd rather have 2, maybe even 3 shots at that position group that you're looking to improve by the draft. And therefore your odds increase dramatically because you've got multiple people in there competing for that spot.
The old saying that time flies when you're having fun, Dave.
There you go.
I think it's time we actually have to go. Or we're going to miss the window with Cam.
Yeah.
We want to thank everybody for being part of the live stream today. Always stay tuned when we have these. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button. Also, last reminder in the live stream here, take part each week the Bengals play in the First Star Logistics giant, I call it giant giveaway. Week 8 is the Crosley Jukebox that has a Bengals theme. I want to make sure, Lap, we're going to put a picture of it on your Twitter, and we'll make sure I'll put one on my Twitter. But visit First Star LOG on Twitter/X for all the details to take part of it. And we always can't say enough about First Star Logistics.
Absolutely. And by the way, Crosley, the name Crosley Field, Cincinnati Reds, this company's been around forever. They were like big sponsors of the Reds back in the day. I mean, when the Reds first were founded, old Crosley Field, that is the company that makes this jukebox. So a little bit of history there, all the Bengal logos and everything that's on that bad boy. You got a conversation piece, and you can enjoy some fine tunes.
Yeah, I read a book one time about the man Crosley.
Yeah.
The whole thing about WLW. And,
Yep.
You know, reason for it. And he had radios and he needed to sell more. And what better way to do it than have a flamethrower radio station like the big one.
50,000 watt flamethrowers, right, man? Crazy.
But we're gonna get out of here. Get ready for Cam Taylor-Britt. Again, I mean, Dolores, I think, posted there in the chat that she enjoyed Lou and Brian. That we had basically Brian ran yesterday on the YouTube channels on both In the Trenches with Dave Lapham and the First Star Media Group. Again, can't stress enough. Make sure you're following both those channels, because at some point in time after the season, we're going to move all the content over to that First Star Media Group channel. And you can also catch Malik Wright, State of the Jungle, and our guy Joe Goodberry, Bengals on the Brain. I mean, you talk about breaking down stuff. He does an awesome job. But you always want to make sure you're subscribe and like and hit that notifications so you get the latest from In the Trenches with the man himself, Dave Lapham. Dave, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals advance offensively in the second half of the season, because Joe Burrow being medically compromised, a lot of things they worked on as a coaching staff during the offseason, they couldn't implement because Joe can't get out of pocket. He can't do this, can't do that. Now they can start incorporating that stuff that they were going to have from Jump Street with Joe. And it's almost like the second season is here. 11 games. You know, it may not be as pretty in against the San Francisco 49ers as it is down the road against other opponents. But now, finally, they're going to be able to attack all quadrants of the field in multiple ways, and the offense is going to look a lot like people expected it to look before the calf injury, the calf, Joe Burrow.
Someone said, I'm tired of hearing about calves.
Yeah.
Everybody, thanks for being with us. He's Dave Lapham. I'm Dave Berk. Until next time, Hoo day.
Hoo day. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.